of the words and also the syntax. The trope really indicate grammar as much as they indicate melody. There's a history behind how they developed and the way that they relate to one another. And it's more than just the melody itself, though the melody is certainly a useful reading tool.
That's really interesting. That almost makes it an inflected language more than...
So really what we're talking about here is that there was an oral tradition of recitation of the text that preceded there being any diacritical marks on Hebrew letters at all. No vowels, punctuation, or trope, or accent marks whatsoever. And we're talking probably somewhere between, I have to check my dates, but like 8th to 10th century, so medieval, early medieval, where various groups of scholars were trying to find ways to preserve the oral tradition of recitation. There was an early system that was developed in what had once been Babylonia. It wasn't called Babylonia, but they still called it. The Jews still called it Babylonia. That didn't end up sticking, and then there was a school in Tiberias in Israel that ended up developing the system that we use today. So the system of not just vowels, but vowels and accent marks was developed by this Tiberian school that were called the Masoretes. So when we say the Masoretic text, that's who we're referring to.
Okay.
And basically they wanted to preserve every aspect of the oral recitation, which included not just tune, but also emphasis of the words, pronunciation of the words, and phrasing. What words are grouped together? Exactly, and degree of pause, because there's also, like for example, there's an accent mark that really functions essentially like a semicolon. It's the main pause in the middle of the sentence. And then you have others that have like lower degree of pause, and there's connectors, and there's like orders, there's like hierarchy of causal trope.
Me too. I want to take this class.
So
when do we start? How busy are you?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, one of the things we're talking about is it we have another person in our community who can also teach this kind of thing too, Kendra.
Oh yeah. That's who we were talking to.
So she and I are kind of talking about like how would it work, because there's all kinds of possibilities and trying to figure out the scheduling of it, coverage. Some people are maybe more beginner, and some folks are maybe at a little bit more intermediate level already. So it's still in the early stages, but for me, it's part of it's bigger than just people's interest. It's also really building an infrastructure of Torah readers in this community, and a culture around it too, where people are able to learn themselves, but then also maybe help teach others too, for that matter. One of the congregations that I'm closely connected to in New York, their master Torah reader is a congregant. He teaches all the classes. He knows more about trope and Torah reading than any of the rabbis there put together.
Wow.
And so he's a major macher in the community.
Okay.
He teaches all of the community's Torah readers.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's really exciting.
So
that would be so fun.
I don't know.
we'll see where it goes, but it's something that I really do want to work on building toward. It will happen. It's just a matter of when.
We have some interest here.
I appreciate that.
Yes. Very much so.
Ken?
Before we get started, I probably should take care of a couple of things.
Sure.
Oh,
Well, now I know what I want to do for the next few months.
good to know that his absence is purposeful absence. Not unexpected.
All right.
Well, I'm going to get it.
I see
Starting to put it up
there.
and we'll put it on the
heard some of it. Yeah. But you feel like she was just
I see you walking with a
I
cane.
guess they
Yeah.
thought we could really go with one major
No,
vaccination and
Years go by, I guess.
I don't know.
Yes,
Something
it
like that,
does.
yeah.
Yes, it catches up with us. doesn't it?
That's what it is, it's what it is. Very slow. It's problematic because we're gonna be meeting with a lot of Palestinians traveling to the West Bank. Shalom. How are you?
Well, there's, maybe
So
I
far,
have
so
to
good.
push it forward or backwards because I can't just turn it.
No, you can't just turn it.
How was the movie the other night?
I will turn it out.
Yes, good.
When I first got, I couldn't go to the drunk. I couldn't just go in the car.
A lot of sympathy.
Good.
It was so bad.
Who leads the discussion? Anybody
And
or
then
is
it has the safety
Oh.
features like the alarm starting, lights.
Oh, good, I'm glad.
Clear up. I don't wanna drive to work and find it as one thing. Have the leadership to make sure.
Always, when you have, you've had upwards of 30 people here. Present when there are live
That's
shows.
right, like.
Well, I'll watch when they're live. I don't see why.
No, yeah, but they lose out because they're,
It takes in so much. It takes in, gender and it takes in male superiority and women the unknown states right now.
oh, how are you? I heard, I couldn't stay for much of the trivia last, I heard it was great. So thank you all for that.
Often run with any volunteers was last.
It's marvelous, right?
You hadn't say this to.
There was something else there, yes.
Well, they cuddle with Reba, they cuddle with each other. Yeah, they just do. But they were literally together. That's where we got them as a mission.
I know that Dale's in the forest.
Sarah has made it. It's the dark film. The black one. It's feeding them sardines.
Actually, I did feed them sardines last night.
You know, that is one of
And they
those
liked it.
widely
Well, yeah.
adapted
Did you
stories
like the sardines?
on
I
stage.
don't eat that. It's disgusting.
Is Orpheus and Eurydice. I am particular. There are some operas that I like and some that I don't. I would say there's a couple that I've seen. There's a Handel opera that I love called Circe. There was Barbara Seville's. Yes, but in Italian. So Circe. Yes. I love it when it's an opera written by a German in Italian about the Germans for British audience. Something about at Barbara.
Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Sounds good.
There's French post-World War I. Surreal satire.
I'm gonna send a friendship because Reba doesn't eat breakfast. He was digging them up, papers, I heard the scratching things, and he was outside the trash, digging them up.
It's very quiet. My mic isn't even on yet.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. It's so good to see you here, those who are in our sanctuary, those who are joining us online. We're so glad that you're with us tonight, or you may be with us another time and not watching in real time, but nonetheless, being part of this community, whether in real time or in after time, is important. It's important for us to gather. It's important for us to be here. Just a few things to keep in mind for those who are joining with us online. Please be sure to check the video description so you can find the link to the prayer book tonight and follow along with the Mishkan Tefillah if you don't have your own copy in another medium. Also, please be sure to check on the link for the program tonight, for our yard site and Kaddish list, for events happening in the next week or so, and just to feel part of the community. So please join us that way. For those of us here in the sanctuary, I hope everyone has a prayer book that you picked up at the rack, on the rack outside. And we begin by just, getting ourselves together here in the mood for Shabbat, in the mood for this day of rest, in the mood for being part of the community.
Nigun, a melody of release. If I were to ask you the question, what month is it right now? You might say what? October. What's another good answer? Another good answer is Cheshvan. And what's even another good answer more than that? Some people call Cheshvan, which is the second month, it's the 8th month of the
Hebrew calendar. Some people even call it Mar Cheshvan. Now, the word Mar has a translation, and that means it's bitter. And some people will say that Mar Cheshvan is bitter because there are no holidays in the month of Mar Cheshvan. So we have holidays in Elul, we have holidays in Av, and holidays in Tishrei, and in Cheshvan, we have no holidays. And everybody says that's a maisa, or that's meaning it could be true, it could be not true. We don't really know. But we have so many arguments about why this month is called Mar Cheshvan. It might be linguistic because the language, because Akkadian, from which we get the names, we derive the names of some of the Hebrew months. It's because there are some words, and if you perform some spoonerisms on some of those words, you come up with something in approximation as Mar Cheshvan. Is that true? We don't really know. But it's fun to argue about it. And maybe because there are no Jewish holidays in the month of Mar Cheshvan, maybe that's what you do. You argue about the name. Like those people who argued whether you stand or whether you sit when you say the Shema. Before worship begins, I want to thank so much Ted Reinecke for being with us tonight. Ted, it's so great to see you after the months of COVID that now you are here accompanying us, and we're so glad that you are here. But on this night, we really have so much to be grateful for, so much to be thankful for. We're thankful for our being able to be here, our being able to celebrate Shabbat, and little by little, people are returning to our sanctuary. So we're glad that you who are here tonight physically are here. Thank you so much for being part of our community. Enter.
So in a moment, we'll be continuing on the bottom of page, I believe, 129. And we'll move into this text from this melody of release to this time of Shabbat, which is that ultimate moment of letting go of the things that have been burdening us for the week behind before we move to the week ahead.
It's the bottom selection on 129.
Shabbat El Yishmereni Oti Le'omead Beino Ubeini Yishmer Shabbat El Yishmereni Oti Le'omead Beino Ubeini Yishmer Shabbat El Yishmereni Oti Le'omead Beino Ubeini
inviting you to turn to page 120 in the prayer book as we thank God for the light of this Shabbat, the light from the Shabbat candles that we light here, that we kindle here tonight, the light in our hearts, which are full of joy for being in this community, the light in the hearts of others who console us when we are down and when we might be depressed because of something that might have happened in the week gone by, and the light that we can share with other people because they are indeed perhaps suffering tonight and we want to be with them. So there are many reasons we are grateful for this light. We hope that we can continue to share the light that is ours to give by virtue of our having performed the mitzvah of lighting these lights. Loving God, with a full heart, we thank you for the blessing of the week which has passed and for the strength which you have granted us to overcome the difficulties in our lives. We ask your blessing for the week that lies ahead. Grant health and contentment to our loved ones and friends. Help us strengthen each other with gentle words and acts of kindness. Bestow your blessings on your people. Bestow your blessings on all of your children. May we enter this Shabbat in peace, in purity, and in radiant joy. Page 120.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Kabbalat Shabbat is a compilation of many psalms, many songs, many expressions of joy as we enter this day. On page 134, we continue with Yiram Hayam. It's about the fifth line down on the Hebrew and the English transliteration side, and it really talks about the sea and the thunder and the sound and the fury, if you will, of the ocean, which is unbridled and needs our protection so much. We continue thinking about water and thunder and force on this Shabbat, Yiram Hayam.
Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Tivel v'yoshveiva, Yiram hayam umelo, Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Tivel v'yoshveiva,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Leharot imcha uchaf yelelelelelele, Yachararim yiraneinu. Leharot imcha uchaf yelelelelelele, Yachararim yiraneinu. Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Tivel v'yoshveiva, Yiram hayam umelo. Neharot imcha uchaf yelelelelelele, Yachararim yiraneinu. Neharot imcha uchaf yelelelelelele, Yachararim yiraneinu. Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Yiram hayam umelo,
Yiram Hayam umelo,
Tivel v'yoshveiva, Yiram hayam umelo.
Greeting Shabbat on page 138 and 139 is Lecha Dodi. We'll offer tonight verses 1, 6, 8, and 9, and of course for the 9th verse, we'll rise and face the door symbolically, welcoming Shabbat into our community.
יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה, יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. שמור וזכור בדיבור אחד, השמיענו אל המיוחד, אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשכחי ומה תהמי, אך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר על תילה. יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תריצי, על יד איש פן ארצי, ונשמחה ונרגילה. יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. אוי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. יללללי לך דודי, יללללי לקראת כלה, יללללי פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה.
On page 140, Tov lehodot l'Adonai, these words from Psalm 92. It is good to give thanks to God. Here this translation says it is good to praise God. It is good to give thanks to God, lehodot. It is good to offer gratitude. And not only to God, it is good to offer gratitude for any entity who gives us what we need to exist in the world. God, according to this psalm, gives us instruments to praise God with and to praise the world with. God gives us knowledge. God gives us the ability to perform deeds of goodness. And so we are grateful. And we show our gratitude for all the things that God has given us. Page 140.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב להודות לאדוני, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר ולזמר לשמך עליון, טוב להודות לאדוני, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, להגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, באמונתך בלילות, טוב להודות לאדוני.
As we begin the evening service now, the evening service proper, which we call in Hebrew ma'ariv, which means the mixing in of light and darkness, there are four major things that the rabbis ask us to be grateful for in the world. One, we offer a prayer for the orderly arrangement of the universe and how light turns to darkness, which then turns to light as the world revolves and as then the world also revolves around the sun. We thank God for the gift of Torah that orders our own individual lives on this spinning planet that we're on. We thank God for the gift of freedom that helps us order the world toward a place where there will be justice for all. And we also thank God for the gift of divine protection, which has been the cornerstone of our relationship with God, but implied in that divine protection that God gives us is the protection that we as individuals afford others around us, whether we are related to them by blood or whether we are deeply in friendship with them. We are responsible for one another on this planet, and we thank God for that interrelationship. We begin Ma'ariv on page 146 as we now offer these prayers of gratitude. We invite the congregation to rise, page 146.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Leolam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
On page 148, we read together at the middle of the page. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time and changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tsebaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on evening.
El chai v'kayam, tamid yimloch aleinu le'olam va'ed, baruch atah Adonai, ha'ma'ariv aravi.
Amen. Top of page 150.
Ahavat olam Beit Yisrael Amcha ahavta Torah u'mitzvot Chukim u'mishpatim Otanu limadeta Al kein Adonai Eloheinu B'shochbeinu u'v'kumeinu Nasiach b'chukecha V'nismach b'divrei Toratecha U'v'mitzvotecha Le'olam va'ed Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu ve'orech yameinu Uvahem nehege yomam v'layla yomam v'layla ve'ahavatcha Al tasir mimenu le'olamim baruch atah Adonai Ohev amo Yisrael.
Page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad
Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. Please be seated. We continue at the top of page 154 together.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha ve'hayu ha'devarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך. וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם. אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
It is said that when the children of Israel, when the people of Israel were about to leave Egypt, they made a choice to go free. It wasn't only God's miracles that brought them forth out of the land, but they needed to make that affirmative choice in order to walk free. So many times in our lives, we too think about the choices we have before us. What will be our choice when it comes to health care, when it comes to reproductive choice, when it comes to taking a walk outside on a cold day and taking the wrong kind of overclothes? Who knows? But the choices we make in our lives are so important, whether they're the friends we choose or the congregation that we choose, the food that we choose, maybe the vaccine we choose. We are here making choices every day of the every day of the year, every day of our lives. And we hope that the choices we make will allow us to remain healthy and happy and strong. We remember this choice for freedom, and we remember what our ancestors did when they went free as they sang this song. They sang Micha Mocha on page 158.
Micha Mocha Ha'elim Adonai Micha Mocha Edar Bakodesh Nora
Nohora,
Tehilot
Tehilot,
Oseh
Oseh,
Vedeh
Eleh,
Nora
Nohora,
Tehilot
Tehilot,
Oseh
Oseh,
Vedeh
Eleh,
מלכותך ראו בניך, חוקי הים לפני משה ומרים, זה אלי ענו ואמרו, אדוני
Adonai,
ימלוך
Yimloch,
לעולם
Leolam,
ועד,
Vaed,
אדוני
Adonai,
ימלוך
Yimloch,
לעולם
Leolam,
ועד.
Vaed,
Yai, lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. Lai, 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 lai. Yai, lai, lai, lai. Yai, lai, 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 lai. ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
On page 160, at the middle, we read together. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and peace evermore.
ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים.
Amen. We're about to begin tefillah for this evening. It starts on page 164. And one of the things that I would say is that at this moment, on the beginning of Shabbat, we have sought strength the whole week through people that we know, through experiences we have, through the work that we do, through the good weather that we've had, at least at the beginning of this week. We seek strength in so many places. And now we have to turn inside and we seek strength from our own hearts and our own minds. And I hope that as we look for strength and as we look for ways of growing into better people, I hope that we find it internally, or I hope that we can also turn to those around us and to find inner strength and find strength from people around us who can help us as well. We begin the tefillah on page 164. We invite you to rise.
Adonai sefatai tiftachu fi yagi tehilatecha Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
166.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'Konei Hakol, Ve'Zocher Chastei Avot ve'Imahot, Umevi Geula Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah.
Page 168.
Atah gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayei hakol atah Rav le'Hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechalkel chaim bechesed, Mechayei hakol berachamim rabim, Somech noflim verofei cholim, Umatir asurim, Umekayem memunato, Lishenei afar, Nichamocha ba'al gevurot, Umidom elach, Melech meimit umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman ata lehachayot hakol, Baruch ata Adonai, Mechayeh hakol.
Amen. We continue on page 175. We remain standing for a few moments. On 175, at the middle, we read together. You are with us in our prayer, in our love and our doubt, in our longing to feel your presence and do your will. You are the still, clear voice within us. Therefore, O God, when doubt troubles us, when anxiety makes us tremble, when pain clouds the mind, we look inward for the answer to our prayers. There may we find you, and there find courage, insight, and endurance. And let our worship bring us closer to one another, that all Israel and all who seek you may find new strength for your service. We now will continue with the tefillah silently, and you may remain standing, or you may be seated according to whatever custom that you'd like to follow. And we'll meet you a little bit later on page 180.
Kamalecha nafshi, Kamalecha visari, Be'eretz sia ve'hayev beli imayim. Tzamama, tzamama, ay, 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 abavai, tzamama, tzamama, ay, 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 abavai. Kein b'kodesh chaziticha lirot uzecha uchvodecha. Kein b'kodesh chaziticha lirot uzecha uchvodecha. Kein b'kodesh chaziticha lirot uzecha uchvodecha. Tzamama, tzamama, ay, 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 amamai, yavai, yavai, vai, yamai, mai, mai, ay, 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 yavai, vai. Shalom, Roma, Yase Shalom, Aleinu, Be'al Kol Israel, Be'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel, Oseh Shalom, Bimromav, Yase Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel ve'imeru Amen. Oseh Shalom bimromav Yase Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel. Oseh Shalom imromav u'yaseh Shalom aleinu ve'al kol Israel ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel ve'imeru Amen.
We invite you to turn in the prayer book to page 123 as the cantor leads us in the Kiddush for this Erev Shabbat. Page 123, thanking God for the glory and beauty of this day. I'm just getting your mic cable away from your water bottle there.
Oh, thank you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu Zikaron le'maaseh v'reishit Ki hu yom techila למקראי קודש, זכר ליציאת מצרים. כי בנו בחרת, ואותנו קידשת מכל העמים, ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת
לחיים. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. You know, a few weeks ago, we began reading yet again, for the 5,783rd time, perhaps, the book of Genesis. We began reading the Torah. And, you know, for a book of the Bible, Genesis has practically anything and everything that you would want. It has our people's fantastic creation myths, mysterious etiological tales about why there is pain in childbirth, or the origin and meaning, perhaps, of rainbows and the nature of nationalism, and our focus on the origins of the Israelite people. It is perhaps an unusual feature of this book, really all of the Bible, which we call sacred scripture, that the Bible also contains depictions of family dysfunction and disarray. Genesis highlights the inept approach of humans who are still learning how to follow a command from the divine and how to communicate and live with one another on this new planet. Like all families, there is function and dysfunction, and they are both recorded in our tradition. Psychotherapist Naomi Rosenblatt has said, both the human condition and family dynamic has changed remarkably little since ancient times. The men and women of Genesis are very much like you and me, or maybe we are like them, I would say parenthetically, but lusting for pleasure and power, dealing with sibling rivalry, and learning by trial and error how to be parents. They fail more often than they succeed, but it is through failing that they move forward, however painfully, in solving their problems. To this end, she concludes, this family prevails by clinging to its faith in its spiritual identity. And I would add, in my way, that we, down through the centuries and encouraged by the rabbis of the Talmud, learn and integrate the lessons that our ancestors learned so that perhaps we don't make the same mistake. Now, as one illustration, I want to examine the words and actions of our matriarch Sarah, as in this week's Parashat, we see her reacting really negatively to the relationship between Isaac and Ishmael. Now, we recall that Ishmael, Abraham's firstborn son, or Abraham's first son, was born through Abraham and Sarah's house servant Hagar, because Sarah believed she herself was never going to bear children. In last week's Parashat, Hagar's pregnancy annoyed Sarah to no end, and after suffering verbal abuse at the hand of her mistress, Hagar fled from the camp. Two important incidents occur next that have a bearing on the teachings of these chapters. One, Hagar is out in the wilderness, but God convinces Hagar to return to the protection of the Israelite camp and guarantees to Hagar that her son Ishmael's descendants will also become a great nation, just like Isaac's. And then in this week's Torah portion, Sarah miraculously becomes pregnant, bears a child whom she names Isaac. He laughed, right? And Isaac, now becomes the apple of Sarah's eye. We think, now she has someone on whom to focus her life and her energies. However, those events have other consequences. In the course of time, Isaac and Ishmael become close, and Sarah sees them this week, in the words of the Torah, playing together. Now, for Sarah, this closeness of half-brothers is as intolerable as Hagar's surrogacy. Sarah now fears that Ishmael will seize the inheritance that is intended for her son. That emotion we hear in the Torah is real and raw, because Sarah cries out, Abraham, you better banish that slave woman from the camp, because I'm telling you, that son of the house servant shall not in any way touch the inheritance of my son Isaac. Sarah is so angry she can't even use Hagar's name. And Sarah's reaction causes Abraham to become despondent and depressed. He just doesn't know what to do. It's terrible behavior on Sarah's part, obviously. And as far as Abraham is concerned, he's in a difficult place. Practically speaking, he can do nothing except accede to Sarah's request. Embedded in this week's parasha is another painful story that involves Sarah and her behavior, and I am sorry, not sorry, to be picking on her so much. It's a reference to reproductive justice, an issue that continues to confront our society, and even more in this hyper-politicized era. In the context of the Torah, Hagar is an enslaved woman. She's a cultural stranger without linguistic or kinship ties to the Israelites, and she has very little legal or traditional protection. Nowhere in these verses does Hagar consent to having her body taken, given, or used in the way that it was. And Abraham and Sarah's orders for her to engage in a procreative union leave her no alternative but to agree. She works for them. Her reproductive life is not her own. She is not able to make choices. She is not given any agency or dignity. She is taken, she is given, she is not asked. She does not get to choose. Her reproductive life, and that is all she seems needed for, is not her own. Further, let us recall that in the context of the ancient Near East, Hagar being a servant and a concubine is bad enough, but to add insult to injury, she's an Egyptian, someone who was considered a subservient class. Today, we might call her, or she might be referred to as, a woman of color who was exploited by Abraham and Sarah. There's an organization that I've heard of called Sister Song, Women of Color Reproductive Justice Collective. And they define reproductive justice as, quote, the human right to maintain personal bodily autonomy, have children, not have children, and parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities, unquote, end quote. To me, this sounds like the terrible challenge that Hagar faces. In our day, reproductive justice brings a racial and economic justice framework to the work of reproductive freedom. We recognize disparities in social, economic, and political power and how these inequalities impact access to reproductive health care. Hagar did not have the right to make decisions about whether to have children or the right or ability to parent the child she did have in a safe and sustainable way. She was not given access to reproductive justice. Disproportionately, those impacted today by restrictions on reproductive health care access are those without power in our or any society. Nowadays, it is BIPOC people, people struggling to get by, immigrants, and others. Why do I bring this to your attention on this Shabbat, drawing my remarks from this week's Torah portion? Look, I'm a rabbi in favor of reproductive justice, and I am proud to stand for everyone's reproductive health, rights, safety, and freedom. I do so not simply because I tend to think that that's the right thing to do, but Judaism demands individual choice on these matters. Judaism says that every case is different and every case has to be determined by the woman and her physicians and perhaps her partner and whomever. That there's not one size fits all solution when it comes at least to our culture and our society and our religious freedom. And I'm especially concerned and ready to struggle over the strength of these Jewish values and connect them to my advocacy for certain laws. Again, in certain cases, our culture, our Jewish tradition requires intervention when the health of the pregnant person is at stake. Pikuach nefesh, that is saving lives, is a key principle in our tradition, just as is upholding human dignity, or something that we would call kvod habriot, and working to make our society safer and more just. The fact of the matter, is that reproductive justice needs to be part of our lives. It is estimated, you may know, that 1 in 4 people who can get pregnant will terminate a pregnancy by the age of 45. In the wise words of reproductive justice activist and We Testify founder Renee Bracey Sherman, she writes, "Everyone loves someone who has had an abortion, whether they know it or not." We know that limiting reproductive health access has disastrous consequences. People who are denied access to reproductive health care are those who are struggling financially, Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, young people, rural communities, immigrants, people living with disabilities, LGBTQIA individuals. All of these are more likely to live in poverty and to remain in abusive relationships if they get pregnant. And high rates of unsafe abortions are directly associated with laws restricting access to critical health care. Our communities should be places where anyone who has or may ever terminate a pregnancy feels loved, welcomed, and supported. They should be places where people understand what our tradition teaches about these issues. And they should be places where we understand the importance of struggling for reproductive health rights and justice for everyone. Yet, since 2011, various states in our nation have passed 566 restrictions to abortion access. And this year has been particularly devastating. Since January of 2021, there have been 561 abortion restrictions, including 165 abortion bans that were introduced in 47 of our 50 states. And at least 83 of these have been enacted into certain states' laws. Texas state legislators have been particularly active, as we know. The Lone Star State has limited its citizens' abortion rights and put bounties on the heads of anyone who dared to offer them help. Florida has recently introduced a similarly restrictive bill. And just today, the Supreme Court of the United States has allowed the Texas law to stand while the court reviews it. Justice Sotomayor offered this as the only written dissent coming out of today's decision, I understand. She writes this: "The promise of future adjudication offers cold comfort for Texas women seeking abortion care who are entitled to relief now. These women will suffer personal harm from delaying their medical care. And as their pregnancies progress, they may even be unable to obtain abortion care altogether." And she adds, "There are women in Texas who became pregnant on or around the day that Senate Bill 8 took effect. As I write these words, some of those women do not know they are pregnant. When they find out, should they wish to exercise their constitutional right to seek abortion care, they will be unable to do so anywhere in their home state." That Texas law is now the second case that comes before the Supreme Court on this issue, joining the one from Mississippi, which is also a direct and explicit challenge to Roe versus Wade. Oral arguments in the Mississippi case called Dobbs v. Jackson Women's Health Organization which centers around a blatantly, I believe, unconstitutional 15-week abortion ban in that southern state, will be heard on or about December 1st. And I think the Texas law is to be heard on November 1st. So this is a particularly difficult moment in time for those who are just reproductive justice advocates. And let me add a few words about the situation here in Wisconsin. Wisconsin, first of all, you should know, has had a law on the books. It was established in 1849, making abortion illegal. That law has never been repealed. And if Roe v. Wade is overturned, Wisconsin women instantly lose the right to an abortion. At this moment, the two legislative bodies appear to favor abortion bans. Just this week, the state Senate passed 4 anti-choice bills, which now have to go to the Assembly. Now, it says that the Assembly may or may not pass them, and our chief executive favors reproductive freedom for Wisconsin's citizens, and he will likely veto any such legislation. But those who favor reproductive choice may not always be in a position to offer such a veto. So it's crucial for us to be on guard to protect the reproductive justice rights of our citizens. My friends, among all the things that need to engage our attention, we must not remain idle while barriers to health care place any individual's health or well-being or autonomy or human dignity or economic security at risk. These rights cannot and should not be taken for granted. The Women's Health Protection Act, a bill to help protect our constitutionally guaranteed right to reproductive health care regardless of the attitudes of the justices on the Supreme Court, passed the House of Representatives in late September. It now must pass the Senate. We need to let our senators know that this is crucial and critical to us. Please consider what you can do to help. The Torah verses that we read on this Shabbat, the ones concerning the shameful behavior of Sarah and the banishing of Hagar and Ishmael from the camp, are also traditionally read, as you may know, on Rosh Hashanah during our season of Teshuvah, our season of repentance. These verses were originally placed on that holy day to remind us that as God considered the barrenness of Sarah and remembered her with a son, so too will God bear us in mind and grant our needs and desires for a healthier future. But there are also other lessons that we need to learn. These verses remind us of the reproductive injustices done to Hagar, and they remind us that we can and must do better, that we must fight for a world with more light, more dignity, more wholeness with reproductive justice for everyone. For that is our vision of the future, a time when all persons will enjoy the dignity of the human family, bearing children when they wish, providing for their children with love and affection, and allowing each person to grow and blossom into people who are cherished and loved. May God help us achieve those goals and more. Ken Yehi L'Ratzon. May this be God's will. Shabbat Shalom. I now would like to invite the community to turn to page 371. Page 371, on that page there is Misha Berach. It is our prayer for healing and wholeness. And as we offer this prayer, we think of many kinds of people. We may be thinking of specific individuals in our family circle or our friendship circle. There are almost 100 people on our healing list who tonight are at home recuperating, or they're in the hospital recuperating, and perhaps they have long-term or chronic illnesses that they're dealing with. There are people who are affected by coronavirus. There are people who live in cities afflicted with strife and contention. There are people with mental illness. There are people who are victims of stalkers and predators, those who have been trafficked as human slaves, victims of violence against anyone due to their skin color or their country of origin or their race or sexual orientation or gender identity, or their ethnicity or their level of ability. Victims of natural and human-caused disasters. Innocent victims of terror around the world, and all wounded service personnel serving our country. There may be people in our sanctuary tonight or watching online at the same time who also know of people who need healing and wholeness in their lives. And again, we don't know how God operates. We don't think that God causes illness. We don't think that God cures really, but we do know that when prayers of a community such as this one go out to a person and they know that they are receiving our prayers, we know that that lightens their spirit and that enables them to do the work of healing. And if you know tonight of someone who needs healing, we invite you to add that person's name to our healing list as tonight we worship in this community or in the online community. You can add their name to the comments section. But if you have a name to add here in the sanctuary, we invite you to do so.
Debbie Oldsman.
Dear God, aloud and in our hearts, we name those facing illness and pain. We share our prayers with the prayers of all who love them. Page 371.
Sheberach Avotenu Mikol HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mi sheberach imotenu ekol habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Our worship continues on page 586 with Aleinu. Page 586 at the top. We invite everyone to rise.
Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו השמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגובהי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
May be seated. We continue on page 589. 589 at the top of the page. We read together, "Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled, Adonai will reign forever and ever.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד. ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד.
Zecher Tzadik Livracha, may the memory of the righteous always be a blessing. At this time in our worship, we pause to remember those who have passed away in recent days and those whose Yartzeiten occur at this time, that is the anniversary of their passing. We pause to remember them, how they influenced our lives, and we hope for good, how their inspiration continues to imbue us with passions for the things that we do in the world, and how their memory allows us to live better lives. We think of these who died recently connected to our community. We think of Amir Saed, uncle of John Sager, and we think of Pat Burgum, mother of Mark Burgum, grandmother of Simon and Rona Burgum. We also remember these whose Yartzeiten occur at this time. In continuing love and devotion, we remember Ladia Bramowitz, Jay Bloom, Robert Ehrlich, Maurice Epstein, Sharon Wagner-Eyman, Catherine Frank, Elsie Glass Rubenstein, Louis Grossberg, Gary Gustafson, Samuel B. Halperin, Violet Hussman, Holly Jelinek, Richard Coons, Charlotte Langson, Lucille Youngerman-Levy, Clara Lorman, Susan Mansfield, Menachem Mansour, Ben Minkoff, Rika DeLevy-Netter, Dr. Myron Donald Olmanson, Julie Schutten-Pitot, Benny Ranich, Berdine Schindler, Annalise H. Schwartz, Judy Seligman, Sandra Stein, and Isidore Wurzel, all of blessed memory. Either online or here in our sanctuary, you may have names that you would like to add to these names on our Kaddish list, and if so, I invite you to do so.
Julian Ehrlich,
Zichronam livracha, may all their memories be blessings in our hearts and the hearts and minds of all those who knew and loved them. Testifying to the faith that binds the generations of humanity together, I now invite everyone to turn to page 598 and to join one another as we rise and to offer the mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, Be'alma divra chirutei ve'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon, u'v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala u'vizman kariv imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevarach le'alam u'lalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal, Shemei de Kudsha Brichu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehe shlama rabba min shmaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Hosei shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'imru amen. May God send peace to all who mourn and comfort those who are bereaved, and we offer amen. Please be seated. In a few moments, our service will conclude, and for those who are joining us online, please, we hope you have an Oneg Shabbat, a joyful Shabbat celebration waiting for you afterwards. Here in the sanctuary, please be sure to take our Oneg to go, which is a big cookie from Just Bakery, a wonderful program we have in Madison that enables people who are leaving the prison environment to learn a trade and to get back out into the world of the non-prisoner world. So please be sure to take a cookie, and we are glad to be partners with Just Bakery in offering them to you. And we hope that you have a joyful Shabbat. That's the whole point. So enjoy the sugar, enjoy the wonderful taste that you will get from those cookies. Before we close, just a few brief announcements. First of all, I really want to thank again Ted Reinke for being with us tonight. We really appreciate your offering your beautiful music for us. Great to have you back, Ted. Thank you. I want to thank my Bima partner, Jacob Nami Cantor. Thank you very much for being a wonderful partner here on our Bima and in the work of community, which is what we all do when we're not offering worship here. We're doing a lot of different things, of course. Thank you to Dale Kaufman, who was our greeter tonight. You did a beautiful job greeting all these people, so it was really wonderful. And thank you all who came tonight to worship with us. It's good to have community here, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to build community. You know, every morning when I'm in the gym, I marvel at the fact that people there don't know how to wear masks. Sometimes they're wearing their mask around their Adam's apple. Sometimes they're wearing their mask just over one of their orifices on their face. Here, everybody's wearing their mask properly. It's so nice to see people wearing their mask properly. Again, we do want to encourage people and let people know that currently we are, as a community, we are observing the current mask order of Dane County and Madison Public Health. That changes maybe, or I should say the next time when there is the next order will be on November 5th. So stay tuned. Who knows what those changes will be. A few other announcements. First of all, tomorrow morning there will be Torah study at 9 o'clock. Please catch that on Zoom. I think Steve Craig is, pardon?
Olson.
Steve Olson, thank you. Steve Olson, I had really bad information here, so I'm going to I guessed wrong. So it's Steve Olson leading Torah study tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. At 10:30 in the morning, join us here in the sanctuary or online for the occasion of Kelsey Metner coming to our Bima as a bat mitzvah. So join us for worship when that happens with us then too. Next Friday evening, Shabbat services will take place at 7:30 p.m. It's the 5th Friday of the month, and gee, anything can happen on the 5th Friday of the month. I mean, you never know. You never know what you're going to find, especially when the Friday evening worship happens so close to a very famous American holiday. We'll see what happens. Next Saturday morning at 9 o'clock on October 30th, there will be Torah study. That's being led by Steve Craig, perhaps. I don't know. But it's going to happen. So please join us for that. And for better details and more details and for registration for some of these programs, please go to our website, tbemadison.org. Thanks very much. I want to remind people of the Swarsensky Lecture Weekend that is happening on November 12th, 13th, and 14th. And just to remind people how that's going to work, Friday evening, November 12th, we will have a worship service here in our sanctuary. Our scholar will be visiting with us on Zoom, so you'll be watching our scholar, hearing our scholar, and people at home will be watching the scholar as well. So please join us on Zoom for, maybe that's...
For the Saturday programs, it will be Zoom.
Yeah, maybe for Friday evening, we're going to be live streaming on YouTube, and for Saturday, the two programs on Saturday and on Sunday, we will be on Zoom exclusively. So again, you can come here Friday evening, but Saturday and Sunday, then access those programs online, because that's where we will be. Anything else? Any other announcements that we should make? Cantor?
Just a reminder that I believe it's next Friday. Somebody can check me on what it says on the website or the calendar, but I believe it's next Friday that we are making the official
switch to broadcasting all of our worship exclusively on YouTube and not on Facebook. We will, however, make sure that if people wind up on Facebook, that they have an easy way to get to YouTube, a link, something of that nature. But I believe it's next Friday that we're making the official switch up. For the last couple of weeks, we've been broadcasting to both. I think that might be it.
I think that might be it. And let's say that that's it. So it won't take us long to get to the cookies, but I do want to offer this benediction for this worship service tonight. And afterwards, we'll offer Gesher Tzar Ma'od on page 643. But help us, God, to feel the peace of this new Shabbat that has just begun. After the noise and clamor of the week gone by, we seek the quiet of Shabbat. After the crowds of indifferent strangers, we seek to reach out to those we love. Or perhaps it is on a screen and perhaps it is face to face. After our focused concentration on our work and our responsibilities of the week gone by, we seek the freedom to listen to our inward selves. We open our eyes to the hidden beauties and the infinite possibilities of this world. We break open the gates of goodness and kindness in ourselves and others, and we seek the love that binds one human being to another. Shabbat Shalom to all. On page 643, we conclude with...
Actually, I would love to direct everybody to the supplement in the
I'm sorry.
program. Not that the Hebrew words for Gesher Tzar Ma'od are absolutely on page 643, but there's a little bit of additional English that you can find in the supplement. Also, you'll see the words for the psalm text that I offered after silent prayer if you want to refer to that. But we'll close with these words from attributed to Rabbi Nachman of Bratslav, who originally wrote that everybody in their life has to cross a very narrow bridge. And the most important and essential thing is not to give in to one's fear. And that however we move forward, we try to not move in the way that fear makes us move.
העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד כל העולם גשר צר כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד כל העולם גשר צר מאוד כל העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד העולם גשר צר מאוד העולם כולו גשר צר מאוד כל העולם גשר והעיקר לא לפחד כלל לא לפחד והעיקר לא לפחד כלל, לא לפחד. As I walk along this very narrow bridge, I will not be afraid, knowing you are with me. As I walk along this very narrow bridge, I will not fear, knowing you are near. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל, לא לפחד. והעיקר, והעיקר, לא לפחד כלל, לא לפחד. לפחד כלל.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Thank you, Cantor.